Right, we won't be needing much. Here's an ancient wood fire kiln. I think this is kind of what they may have been like in Roman times, depending on where you lived. And here he is. Late Bronze Age people used these bottles for a variety of milks. They were about 3,000 years old and were found in ʍosendorf, Austria. Due to the little spout, they were thought to be babies' bottles. I think that's all I've written actually, so there's not a lot of good information there. But these were found in infant graves often, though they may have also been used to feed the elderly, ill or weak. Inside the pot there was the residue of milk. In a few of them they found cloven hooved animal milk, maybe goat's milk it's likely, and in another they found either pig or human milk. It's hard to tell the difference. It shows us a little bit about how significant milk was to the Bronze Age and Neolithic diet, which I think is very interesting. One day it will begin with digging clay out of a hill. I promise you that day will come. But for now, let's get clay out of the bag. Now where is my cheese wire? Okay. Now it's always quite difficult when I make things and I film it to not get clay all over the camera. So that's why there's less angles often when I start making. I'm just hoping to get him big enough to have a reasonable sized drink from. I start with a round ball of clay and I'm going to make that bigger than his current body, and of course it's going to be hollow so it will be bigger still. And I begin by pressing my thumbs into the clay. I couldn't tell you if this is how they were doing it, but it's how I would begin any pinch pot, so I would love to see one of these in real life. I never have. And there's a few of them. I've been to a museum of prehistory in the Dordogne. I'm very lucky to have been. And there I saw a lot of beautiful arrowheads and axes and a fantastic strange stuffed creature. Do you see here I'm forming this pot shape by pinching it, and that's why it's called a pinch pot. But I'm now going to fold a little pleat into it so that it becomes more closed at this end, like so. And I'm going to do that increasingly until I come to a point like this. I don't worry too much about the texture on the surface of the pot, because once I have come to the point and closed it off, the air inside will be trapped, which gives me something, the air, to press against to smooth the outside. So until then we just leave it all fingerprinty. Now I actually have a problem with my knuckles as well as a problem with my kiln, which means that some of the pinching, it makes my joints hurt. But I found this method that's quite good, where I put my two fingers on the inside and use my outside thumb to press against them. And that's much easier on the knuckles. So if anybody is trying to make these from this video, or however, who struggles with things like arthritis, there are ways, there are methods, I promise, to be able to pinch things. And whilst I'm on the tip for people with arthritis, use a hand blender to make crumble topping. This is going to be his neck end. When I began, I thought this would be his tail, but I've made it much longer than it needs to be, so I may as well turn it into his neck. I couldn't tell you what animal he is, actually. He looks a bit like a kangaroo, a bit like a goat. Not sure. Now, he has this sort of droopy nose, and I think that's what makes him so cute. So we're just going to make sure we get that really droopy nose. I'm trying to keep the tops of his horns quite rounded because I think they'd get knocked off by sticks inside the kiln, inside the pit. And I don't want to spend too much time on him because I want to make sure it's not heartbreaking if they all break, until I've got good at this, you know. Now, when I was making this one, I realised that he was flatter on one side, the original, which I was referencing, and I'm presuming that's because it was left to dry on one side. Its feet wouldn't be strong enough to hold it whilst it dried. So that makes that nice and easy. I'm not going to puncture that top hole nor the tail hole until the very end, otherwise he'll just collapse. I'll do them when he's partly dry. If you were very unwell and potentially on your deathbed, there's not a lot of joy and not a lot of things to look forward to in your life. It could be very difficult, I imagine. But someone making for you, or at least serving to you, your medicine or whatever sustenance in a pot, so sweet. That's a nice thing to do, isn't it? Maybe they were just bored though, and so they made them like this. Who knows? I can but hope this is an example of human kindness. This is a comb. Not quite the kind of comb they would have had, but it's a nice comb. I'm not trying to get him exactly like that one because I want him to have some unique character. They have 2 feet like a human being, which is quite strange. So we're going to go for 2 feet like a human being. It's tricky because, you know, I'm just eyeballing where I think that should go, but I need to get his centre of balance quite well, or he just won't stand. But you can push him and tilt him forwards and back a little if he's not fully dry. When he's sort of cheese dry, there is still room to play if I do get the centre of balance wrong. And there he is with his big clumsy clown feet. But he did fall. So don't stand them up when they're wet. Words of wisdom. I'm going to lay him down like that to dry so he doesn't get damaged. When I made this one, I was going for a mother and child that could stand together affectionately. So I think probably this is the dad, but he needs a bit of work when he's more dry. I hope you enjoyed that and it wasn't too boring. I'm off to check on my kiln.